Dear chess friends, welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to the most spectacular tournament of this year. Welcome back to the FIDE Grand Swiss in 2023. So we're now in the epic round 8. In round 8, many things happened. I think this was really heated round for us to follow. Many great games have been played, but in my opinion, one of the most important games of this round and one of the most spectacular games in the whole tournament was now this game that I'll show you today. The beautiful and spectacular game played by two young, very talented players between Andrey Esipenko and Vincent Keymer. Before this round 8, Andrey Esipenko and Vincent Keymer had 5 points. The leader of the event after several rounds, Vidit had 5.5 points, but Vidit played a draw today, which meant that one of those players, if he wins this game today, will catch up with Vidit and will of course share the first place, which is really an amazing and spectacular moment, I think, for both of these players. But it means also if you lose now the game in the round 8, I think you're simply out of the event, because in this heated moment of the event, in this really spectacular and dynamic tournament where you cannot allow yourself a tiny little slip up, if you lose one game, then I think it's over for you. So really one of the most important rounds of this amazing and spectacular tournament in this year. So let's see now what happened. Andrey Esipenko against Vincent Keymer. Pay good attention. You see, I think here also a dynamic, really beautiful and spectacular Stockfish novelty in the English opening. In my opinion, one of the best chess games for sure in this epic tournament. So with the white pieces, Andrey Esipenko opened with the move knight to f3. We have knight to f6 by Vincent Keymer. So now the main line is of course to play d4 or c4. Here Esipenko played the English opening. We have now the Anglo-Indian defense with the move e6, preparing of course to break and enter with the move d5, g3, going maybe into structures of the Catalan opening. After move g3, we have now the move d5, bishop to g2 by Esipenko, and now you could go of course maybe with bishop to e7, then probably white continues with d4, then maybe in the standard lines of the Catalan opening. But here because white never advanced the pawn, here Vincent Keymer makes already a huge decision in the center of the board, plays now the move d4, and basically the game is now a sort of reverse Benoni, where white is playing sort of a Benoni structure. It's not of course the same, but with similar plans, with similar ideas. If you're maybe a Benoni player, then you know how to play this game with the white pieces. I think we have now really many opportunities for white to break and enter here with a3, b4, getting use of this diagonal, like in the Benoni defense when black is building the structure g6, g7 bishop to g6 bishop to g7, and then of course plays a6 b5. So it's, as I said, similar, not the same, but at least with similar strategic concepts now for white, like black is playing in the Benoni defense. So we have now kingside castling by Andrey Esipenko. And here again, maybe a tiny little, I would not say inaccuracy, but I don't like this line that Vincent Keymer is playing with the move knight to c6. It's playable, nothing wrong, but I like to support, when I play with the black pieces, I like to support my pawn on d4 with another pawn, because the main advantage in these types of positions that black is here is of course the space advantage. We have at least made progress in the center of the board by pushing the pawn to d4. Now it is supported. It is of course also supported by the knight, but I think the huge difference is after you play c5, if for instance white continues now with the move e3, then we can further support it with your knight. Then after something like e takes d4, c takes d4, after move d3 by white, the main concept I think is to play sort of line knight to d7, bishop to e7, and then e5 to advance the pawn. And then I think you have a solid structure. As I said, you would play simply sort of a reverse Benoni here with the black pieces. So after move e5 that you play, you have a really powerful center. You have also the control of the d4 square. So this is a line that I like to play. I'm not saying, as I said, that this move is wrong or something by Vincent Keymer, but I like simply the support of the pawn, because here Esipenko immediately, like in the previous line, breaks the center with the move e3. Here we have e5, but now the fun starts. Now you see really pervert, really dynamic Stockfish novelty here played by Andrey Esipenko. After e takes d4, you can of course take the pawn. Still this pawn is supported, but I don't like that the e file is already open. So you see white continues then with this method, rook to e1. After e takes d4, here we have e4 by Vincent Keymer, and now many things have been played in chess history. Rook to e1 was a good choice, knight to g4 was a good choice, but never never, really never, no one in chess history dared to play this beautiful move by Andrey Esipenko. We have now really a wild theoretical novelty in the English opening. Look at this, d5, sacrificing the piece in an early stage of the game. We're now in move 8, and we have now already spectacular battle in the center of the board. After move d5, here Vincent Keymer accepts the challenge. E takes f3, queen to f3. The knight is still hanging. You have to play knight to e5. Everything now is pretty much forced. You have to play now the only moves. Also white, also black. If you slip a little bit here, I think you're getting destroyed in an early stage of the game for both sides. If you make a tiny little inaccuracy with white, tiny little inaccuracy with black, your game is over. Very spectacular line. Look at this. After knight to e5, rook to e1 by Esipenko. He wants, of course, to have his piece back. Here, queen to e7. Again, only move here by Keymer to protect now the knight. Again, the only move. Queen to d1. You have to keep your queen connected to the rook, and now you're trying, of course, to play the move d4, hitting the knight and, of course, get your piece back. Again, the only move. Bishop to g4 by Vincent Keymer stops, of course, white's idea to play the move d4. f3 must move here for again for Andrey Esipenko. Here again, the only way to make something happen here for Vincent Keymer is to play bishop to f3. If you play bishop to d7, then this idea is coming, d4. You have to play something like knight to c4. We simply take out the queen. You can, of course, get enough material, but look at this. With knight to c3, we're getting the knights into the game. We still have a queen. We have now the space advantage with the pawn on d5. We'll play f4, liberating the long diagonal for the light square bishop. The dark square bishop is already having a good activity, so this is game over here for black. So after move f3, you have to play bishop to f3. But now, of course, you cannot play bishop to f3 yourself here with the white pieces. As I said, you just have to play the only moves here. After bishop to f3, of course, knight takes f3 comes in a beautiful way into the game. You have to play queen to f3, and now the rook is hanging. So this is not working. After bishop to f3, queen to a4. Again, the only move for Esipenko, and now, of course, king to d8 has to be played now by also by Vincent Keymer. If you play now c6, if you want to cover, of course, your king, then d4 is working, and this is now, I think, again, completely winning game here for white. Here, after move queen to a4, you see you cannot cover with the queen because then the knight is hanging. You cannot, of course, cover with the knight because then here this knight is hanging, so it's simply a devastating position. King to d8, the only move here for Vincent Keymer. We have now the move d4, bishop to g2. Rook takes e5, attacks the queen. We have queen to d7, and now after queen to d7, again, the only move here for Esipenko. Vincent Keymer immediately takes out now the queen with the knight and hits the rook, but now Esipenko makes a huge decision and plays now king takes g2. Allows here Vincent Keymer to pick up now the rook on e5. Look at this. After d takes e5, white is down the exchange, but has now two pawns and one minor piece for the exchange for the rook, and has now already very advanced pawns. It's an unpleasant position to handle, to play with the black pieces. Believe me, the engine gives here equal chances. The Stockfish engine evaluates this position as 0.0. So probably if two top engines would play this game, maybe Lila C0 against Stockfish, this game would for sure end with a draw. But now again, you have to make a huge decision in order to break this pawn chain. Remember, always the best way to break pawn chains is to break them in the middle of the pawn chain. Of course, the middle of the pawn chain is the pawn on d5. In order to break it, the correct choice, the correct answer for black, pardon me, is to play the move c6. That would be now the correct move. And this was now the first inaccuracy, the first tiny little inaccuracy here by Vincent Keymer. He tried to break the pawn chain from the front. He's trying to somehow break the e5 pawn, but this was not the correct move because obviously white is going to pass through. We'll simply play on this idea. Now c6 comes a little bit too late because still we have then two connected pass pawns, because now the e pawn has passed the f pawn, and now even if you trade off the c pawn for the d pawn, still we're going to recapture with our c pawn, and we'll have two connected pass pawns that are very dynamic and progressive in the center of the board. Very wild stuff. So as I said, after c6, this would be a hard position then for white to handle. Look at this, you have to play knight to c3. Look at this, king to d7. We're getting the rook. We're getting also maybe the bishop into the game. I'm not saying black or white have to play this kind of line, but this is also for instance, the suggested line by Stockfish engine. So this would be probably the outcome, but it's a little bit different because the e pawn is not a pass pawn, because we have never advanced our pawn to f6. So this structure is not so dynamic like this one. After d takes e5 and the tiny little inaccuracy that here Vincent Keymer played, as we said, e6, c6, we don't react. Now you take, and after c takes d5, two connected pass pawns are storming to you now, supported by the bishop, supported by the knight, supported potentially with the rook. From this point on, it's very, very hard to defend position now here for Vincent Keymer because of the tiny little inaccuracy, because he didn't break the pawn chain where he's supposed to break it. So very, very wild stuff. So after rook to c8, knight to c3, it's a little bit easy now for Esipenko to play the game. Now he plays knight to e4, gets the knight very active into the game. Rook to c4, maybe again not the optimal way. Here again you have to, I think, play sort of a blockade. King to e7, never allow here maybe this pawn to be advanced, because after something like d6 we can always then pick up the pawn on e6. At least with king to e7 you're holding the position, you're trying to block it out. This was maybe also the correct choice. From this point on, I think the game becomes very, very a one-way ticket in White's favor because of the tiny little inaccuracies here by Vincent Keymer. Rook to c4, he's trying to attack, but king to f3 gets the king closer. Look how Esipenko is keeping the pieces glued together, very, very compact. After rook to d4, another maybe not good option here for Vincent Keymer. Again, maybe king to e7, the Stockfish engine suggests. Again, play this blockade, again not allow him to advance the pawn on d6. If both of these pawns get to the 6th rank, I think this is very, very hard to defend. So this was the way to go. After king to f3, rook to d4 here by Vincent Keymer, Esipenko simply attacks the piece. We have now a check by the rook, and maybe now Esipenko makes his first inaccuracy in the game. He plays king to g2 instead of king to e2. Of course, I think king to e2 was a better choice, because now two pieces are hanging. You can maybe pick up this pawn. Now we pick up the piece, and White is continuing then the game with this very dynamic pawn on the e file with two minor pieces against the rook with the open a file. So again, I think this would be a winning position here for White. But king to g2, as I said, maybe tiny little inaccurate move, but still White is much, much better in this position because of this very, very advanced pawns here in the center of the board. We have bishop to a5. Now comes knight to d6 with the threat of knight to f7 fork. We have king to e7. Now we have a couple repeating moves, but now after king to e7, knight to f5 and king to d8, now finally Andrey Esipenko advances the pawn. He's trying now, of course, to get something with his very powerful pawns on d and d file. We have g5 hitting the bishop, bishop to e3, good move. The bishop is protected by the knight. Rook to e8, e7. Look at this, the pawns are marching. Basically, they're unstoppable here. King to d7, bishop to a7. Here, Esipenko grabs another pawn. The knight is protecting the d6 pawn. Here in the game, rook to d6 was played by Vincent Keymer. He had enough of this very, very progressive pawns. But the better choice was maybe here, king to d2. I'm just maybe showing you here maybe a tiny little better continuation for black. But in any options, I think White should be winning here. King to f3, you can play g4. Now we get the king closer. We get bishop to e5. This pawn is weak. So again, a messed up position here for black. After bishop to a7 here, Vincent Keymer tried this one, knight to d6, king to d6, very important move, b4, zwischen attack against here this bishop on a5, bishop to c5, attacks the king and also protects the pawn on e7. So this is now completely, I think, winning endgame here for White. We have king to c6, we have rook to c1, and here bishop to d4, attacks also both of this bishop. Both bishops are now under fire. We have rook to e7, here Esipenko grabs another pawn. We have now an attack against the bishop. Here check, this pawn is falling, so now Esipenko has two more pawns in this beautiful endgame. So this should be, as I said, completely winning here for White. Bishop to b6, rook to b5. Here Esipenko gets a little bit of the bishop around. We have king to h3, h5, rook to c5, rook to d3, and now simply trying to trade off more pieces. We have bishop to d4. Here Andrey Esipenko grabs another pawn, which creates now again two connected pass pawns here on the king side, which are basically unstoppable. Here White is up 3 pawns. Okay, you can maybe pick up this one, but these pawns are simply unstoppable here on the king side. I think in one moment you have to sacrifice the bishop maybe for these 2 pawns. After rook takes h5, rook to c3. Now finally Vincent Keymer takes. We have bishop to e5, rook to h7, 7, attacking now the pawn, getting behind the pawn, grabbing another pawn, very, very important move. Rook to a1, and after rook to a5, in this particular position, Vincent Keymer resigned, and Andrey Esipenko won the game. Really great game. But this is epic opening theory. Let's go back to the beginning. This was really a line that I've never seen before. e3 takes d4, e4, d5. This you have to know, this you have to study, I think, with the Stockfish engine at home. Spectacular opening line. This is what we want to see, I think, in chess. Theoretical novelties, improvements of lines, improvements of variations. Great game, in my opinion, one of the greatest games for sure in this amazing chess event. So with this win, Andrey Esipenko took now the lead. Let's go to the current standings. Look at this. Andrey Esipenko is now on the first place. He's sharing, of course, the first place with Vincent Gurati, with Fabiano Caruana, and Daniel Bogdan Deak. So still, of course, I will not say Predke Cheparinov with 5.5 points. Also, Hikaru Nakamura. We should never exclude out of the potential because when Hikaru plays his back chess, then of course it's a little bit different. Then it's a different story. So still, Hikaru has great chances. Look at this. He's only half of the point behind the leaders. Yuri Kuzubov, of course, Alexis Sarana, Arjun Irgaisi. We have here Samuel Seven, Parham Maksudlu, Vladimir Feodosev have, I think, also great chances. Now, the other players, I think, with 5 points, will have a tough time because we still will have 3 more rounds. In an optimal world, you can win maybe this tournament with 5 points now, but of course the top favorites are now these 4 players: Andrey Esipenko, Vidit Santos Gurati, Daniel Boldandeak, and Fabiano Caruana. So this was it. This was the game of the day. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it a lot because that's what I love about chess. Really novelties, new ideas, new progressive plans. This was simply one of the best chess games here from this tournament for sure. So, okay, if you want to see some other top games here on my YouTube chess channel from this tournament, check out our coverage so far. Here's the link of the playlist. And if you want to see the real Stockfish playing even more brutal chess games and even more brutal theoretical novelties, check out our combat chess games played by computers. Here's the link of the playlist also. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. What do we say at the end? Chess is the best, of course.